Sony has just announced that the PlayStation Vita will now be considered a legacy platform. Now, what does that mean for the average gamer? It means that the PlayStation Vita will no longer be the primary focus of Sony's handheld gaming division. They'll still make games and still have some level of support for it, but they will slowly be rolling back on that. And in my personal opinion, I give it another year or so, and it will be discontinued, and they will no longer be manufacturing PlayStation Vitas. The reason for this mainly has to do with the PlayStation 4 pretty much dominating in the home console market, and then also more so on the fact that the PlayStation Vita has had some very, very weak sales. They only sold about 5 million PlayStation Vitas, whereas the 3DS, from what Nintendo has reported, had sold upwards of 50 million units. So the PlayStation Vita is not even in the same ballpark when it comes to competing with the 3DS. Now, there's a few reasons for the PlayStation Vita having very weak sales, and I want to rule out a few reasons that people are trying to say. A lot of people are saying that it's because of the cost. Now, the cost of the base unit, I don't think is an issue. When the PlayStation Vita first came out, it was $250 for the Wi-Fi model and $300 for the 3G model. And the 3DS X, or the 3DS, the original one, was $250, and then the XL, which came out a few years down the road, was about $200 on initial launch. So $50 either way. I don't think it's going to play that big of a factor when games are costing anywhere from $40 to $60 anyways. So I don't think that kind of price difference is that big of a factor. But the reason that cost has become a factor is mainly due to Sony's own arrogance. And I say that because Sony has decided to make the PlayStation Vita the memory, or the expandable memory card, proprietary, meaning that you can only use a memory card that Sony sells or specifically makes for the PlayStation Vita, and not a standard issue micro SD card. So in doing so, they price gouge. And the reason that they say they did this was to prevent piracy. Now, on that note, people are going to find out how to hack into anything. You can do whatever you can to try to prevent it, but at the end of the day, it's stupid for Sony to try to, punish everyone for the actions of a few. And on the initial launch, the prices of these, PS Vita exclusive, these PlayStation Vita memory cards, for a 32 gig was 120, 16 gigs was 70, 8 gigs was 45, and 4 gigs was 30. Now, if you've ever been on Amazon or any other, electronics website or even an electronics store, memory cards don't cost that much. And on Amazon, I bought a top-of-the-line Class 10 micro SD card. It's meant for, extreme picture quality. And actually, no, it says something about like extreme transfer rates, and I think it was like either 128 megabytes per second or 256 megabytes per second. So it's one of the best micro SD cards you can buy for a phone. I can record 4K and save it onto my on my memory card without any kind of like lag or anything like that. But Sony decides to do what Microsoft did with the Xbox 360, where they had proprietary memory cards and hard drives, and that's just stupid. People want to play the games and not have to tackle on a whole bunch of extra costs. The 3DS, all you have to do, you can buy any brand, anything you want. You put in your 3DS and you're good to go. But Sony just doesn't get the point. And it's crazy because Sony, on their console, the PlayStation 4, you can swap out your hard drive, but then let's say with the Xbox One, you're not capable of doing that. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then the other issue that I see, personally, is that the Nintendo, to me, has more clout when it comes to the home, or not home, but the mobile gaming market. I had a Game Boy when I was like a kid. I'm 22 years old, and I remember having a Game Boy Color when I was like in preschool or something like that. So, Nintendo has been around in the handheld gaming market for a long time. A lot of people who have, had Game Boys and whatnot growing up, they probably have children now. A lot of people, are starting to have kids, and when they want to buy their kids a handheld gaming device, they're going to look for Nintendo because that's what they played with. And that's another factor that plays into it. Sony is relatively new to the game. The PSP, I want to say, is the first, attempt to try to get it, or their first incursion into the handheld gaming market. And I mean, the PSP didn't, it did pretty well. I think the last stat I saw that during its total lifespan, throughout all the PSP models, it sold about 60 or 70 million units, which is a lot better than the 5 or 6 million units that the PlayStation Vita has sold. But, in closing, I'm somewhat glad that Sony is sort of, not focusing too much on the PlayStation Vita, because if they focus on it too long, then that could take away from other aspects of, their company, such as the PlayStation 4. But then it sort of sucks for the people that do own the PlayStation Vitas, because, hey, look, you bought a gaming device that you want to have for probably, I would say, 6-7 years, and now it's being shown the door. And wow, like, you spent all this money on the Vita and then the SD card or whatever, and now it's pretty much, in a year or two is going to be like having a PlayStation 2. You're not going to have any new games come out for it or whatever. But that's all, guys. Actually, the PlayStation 2, I don't even want to make that comparison, because the PlayStation 2 is the best selling console of all time. So that's sort of a bad reference to use as a comparison. But yeah, whatever. So thanks for watching. Subscribe. Tell me what you guys think about the PlayStation Vita being a legacy platform in the comments below. And have a nice day. Peace out.